I love how you always say it like you're not quite sure, you're surprised. I think your mic is off, but my mic is on.
Ah, there we go. My mouse is not working properly. See, it made total sense for me to be like, ah.
Yep, you're on now.
Hey, Marianne. Yeah,
Yeah,
my mouse just like what doesn't want to click. Like I have to like punch it really hard to click it. I think I just need a new mouse.
I am not always against new contraptions. I've actually kind of just been like thinking to myself that it's probably time for a new laptop.
Yeah, so the way you are with phones is the way I am with laptops. Like I get one, I like the way
Oh
it
yeah, no.
works. I don't ever want it to go away.
No, I agree. I generally keep my laptops until they die. And to be fair, this one that I'm using was free. Um, that's the nice thing about having a partner in IT. It was an
Yeah.
extra hanging around.
I miss
Um,
working in IT. I truly miss that because yeah. Oh yeah, I know, Marianne. I periodically just peek at the one I have, like this year's version of it, and I'm always like, oh my god. Um,
and that's another reason for me being like, maybe it's time to get one because I don't see that improving anytime soon. And if anything, just kind of like slowly getting worse and worse. So I'm like,
yeah,
might as well grab one so maybe I can be good for a good number of years. Same with when I bought my car and was just like,
yeah.
get
Well,
yeah.
your phone lasted such a long time.
When it still didn't, and I didn't even replace it because it was broken. It still could have kept going. I needed a better camera for a lot of the things that we do.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So
yeah, it's how it is. It's how it is. Anywho,
before we forget and something just goes, we are both experiencing weather. In my case, I've actually had my lights kind of flicker. I'm not going on wood because it did not affect my Wi-Fi router, all that. But just better to let you guys know.
yeah, we're looking apocalyptic outside. I wouldn't
Yeah,
mind a
it's
good thunder boomer, to be honest with you.
yeah, ours has been going on for about an hour and 15. And I was in the kitchen cooking about an hour and a half ago, and when it started, I was like, you know how like when there's a close by lightning strike, like the air is literally like charged. It kind of makes you feel like a little ugh. I felt like that. I'm standing at my stove, and my stove is at a back wall of my kitchen. So something struck not far away, and it was like I was facing that direction, and I was like, ooh.
One reason I want a thunder boomer is because after lightning, the garden goes bananas from like the
Mm,
electrical surge.
yeah. Well,
Um,
that it ionizes. I mean, as I mean, like don't get me wrong, lightning's dangerous. I actually know people who have been struck, and it's scary. But it like a thunderstorm like really cleans the air because the ionization and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, we really haven't had any this season.
So,
So mine's
oh, Marianne,
the
I'm glad
worst.
that your smoke is gone. That
Mine
smoke
is
that hit
too.
you, we got it too. It just took longer to get to us. This past week has been a nightmare for me, like allergy and breathing wise. So I'm kind of grateful for the rain.
Yeah, we were supposed to be really nasty all day. A lot of it's moved to tomorrow, but it's still good to put out the PSA. In
Yeah.
speaking of PSAs,
PSA.
for next week, the 28th of July.
Shh, let's pretend that July isn't almost over.
Oh my God. Oof. So we're gonna read two more chapters. We're gonna start with A Tranquil Nation is Ripped Apart. And we're gonna go through the Grand Epoch. So that is pages 103 to 181. It's roughly 47 pages of reading. So
Okay, so this is a big one.
this is a big one. This is the biggest one. This is the biggest one.
Okay.
Um
Yeah, I got excited as I was reading because I was very last minute with my reading, and I'm like, oh gosh, so many pages. And then I was like, 2 full pages of just quilt pictures. I was like, thank you, Roderick Kirakofe, for this one.
Yeah, there's I continue to be extremely impressed with the the quilt photos. I have a number of photos today. We've got some websites, and we've got, hold on, let me find.
We have a little video that I guess we could probably leave that to the end because it's, or whatever. I also have a little bit of a story. I did some research to figure something out.
Wow.
So, when we get to Baltimore album quilts, I have a story.
Okay, well, hold on real quick. I have way too many windows open. Holy crap. Before we get too excited with that, let's just look at a calendar real quick, because this Saturday we have another Stitching Glitch.
Yay! Stitching Glitch.
And
oh, Marianne, I could tell you about American Hurrah. We'll get to it.
I thought there was something that we wanted to talk about on the Stitching Glitch. Now I can't remember. So, hopefully it will come to me.
Yeah, there is something.
Before Saturday.
And now I'm blanking out. One thing I can tell you guys, I am going to a quilt study tomorrow. Knocking on wood also that, like, whatever this apocalyptic storm doesn't, like, prevent me from getting there. But yeah, I haven't been in a while just because I just had conflicts for, like, the last few scheduled dates. And I'm like, I put this one on my calendar to make sure I didn't miss it. So,
okay, speaking of, if we go back to the beginning of our chapters here. Where is the beginning? Okay. So, I need to stop here for a sec. One thing that stinks is I opened so many photos today.
I didn't even try to look for any.
And my computer, well, that it's giving them to me in a list form.
Oh, gosh.
Not in a picture form.
Well, so as you're organizing that, I will talk about American Hurrah, because American Hurrah is not necessarily really, like, book content, even though they supplied a lot of pictures. So American Hurrah was a quilt store or gallery store in New York. I think they may have had one or two. I think they had like 2 locations, maybe more.
Yeah,
than
they were big time dealers.
Yeah, and so I too was kind of confused because they show up everywhere. Anything like I think 80s and 90s, anything that was quilt related, like, big quilt study, you see stuff that is provided by American Hurrah. Their names are is it Kate and Joel Kopp, Copp. They were just a young couple that they kind of had that history, kind of like at the very beginning Roderick talks about how he really didn't know anything about quilts, but he found this quilt at an auction and was like, fell in love with it, and that was the end of it. Quilts are everything now. And I think they kind of had that experience too. I think Joel was a collector, like, before they started the shop, so he was very used to, like, searching and finding things. But yeah, so they ended up closing the shop down. I want to say it was the late 90s, maybe 2000. Like, it might have been the year 2000 they closed down. And a bunch of their stuff was auctioned, I believe. And last I could find, I found an article about Joel Kopp from, I don't know, sometime in the past decade. He is making these cool sculptures out of, like, metal debris. So, yeah, like, a massive departure from quilts, but, like we were looking at one of that very cool fabric swatch book last week that a woman had kept, and it belonged to them. And Jill and I couldn't really find anything other than, like, what Roderick has presented. My assumption is, unless it's in a museum that we just haven't run across it, I'm kind of wondering if that's still in their collection.
Mm.
You know, I don't know what they're doing today, like this minute today. So
I'm
but
sure
yeah, it was.
some of our long-term dealer friends
Yeah, you know,
been in the
it
business
is.
just as long probably know them
Oh,
pretty well.
absolutely. I'm sure they do. You know, they were kind of a New York City, like, you know, one of those things. Like, if you were looking for quilts and you were in New York, you went to American Hurrah. Laura
Hmm.
Fisher was another one, but I feel like American Hurrah, I see them a lot more than Laura Fisher. It seems like they were very generous about, you know, giving rights to use their pictures and that kind of thing.
Well, there is some people that do have, and I'm not saying that they do, but they might, that have that belief that, the more your piece is published, it can raise its value. So I don't know if maybe they were of
Yeah,
that,
could be.
opinion, or just
I don't know.
they.
It just seems like they were young when they started. You know, they were very young when they started the shop. I don't think they were. I think maybe they hadn't been married that long, if I remember correctly. They were written up in Quilter's Newsletter magazine, but otherwise, they're really. I couldn't find anything online about them either. It was really through Quilter's Newsletter magazine that I kind of got their story.
Yeah, I would say like they weren't really around for the major boom of the internet.
Yeah, yeah, they were
Yeah.
kind of petered out right there at the end.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know why they shut the store down. I guess maybe it had just run its course and they were moving on to different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel like we should ask our friends. What if there's like a big scandal? Yeah.
Yeah, we do have several friends who I think, in fact, I believe somebody near and dear to me, I think, may have bought one of their first quilts from them.
Oh yeah.
Not their first quilt, but I do believe it was like one of their first in their collection that they purchased from American Hurrah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Well,
So
you
you have got the quilt here. I'm assuming you took this picture from the book.
I did because this was just like too amazing. So, like obviously as we get going here in the pre-industrial America chapter, there's a lot of talk about how, before a certain point, just not a lot of stuff exists. And what's very interesting, is, Rod mentions in here that it's somewhat of a myth that just like, oh, there was tons of stuff and we just don't have any of it anymore.
Right.
And I was kind of like, meerkats. um and there's a chunk in here. I'm gonna quote. Page starts on page 46. Is quilt historian Sally Garut, AQSG's founder,
Sally.
has pointed out, the folklore surrounding the emergence of quilt making in this country has almost obscured real history. We often talk about, people who think it's just purely an American thing. It has long been a cherished notion that it was the colonists' need for warm bedding that inspired them to piece together all available scraps of fabric. I think we've probably all heard that.
Yeah.
But the reality is that most women were too busy with the tasks necessary for basic survival, such as growing and preserving food, to spend precious time making quilts for bed covers where there were other less expensive sources available. Then, as now, women who made quilts were expressing their artistic and creative impulses by working the medium most familiar to them, that of fabric and thread. Indeed, as Garut points out, a significant number of late 18th century American quilts are not warm at all, containing as they do only the minimal amount of filling to show off the quilting. The need for American women to make handsome quilts does not appear to be either economic or practical.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I thinking about the stuff that does exist, and I mean, we've seen some of it up close, like in museums and such, like, you know, as close as you can get to it. And it makes perfect sense. You know, it's that was a revelation for you, Marianne. Yeah, it seems like that, you know, the more you look at these things, you think to yourself, well, I mean, certainly, I guess some lesser stuff could have been used up, and these are what is left. But that, I don't know, that just doesn't bear out when you look at like the actual history. If you get down into the history of what was happening and the trade situation and all that, I guess it's just a bunch of puzzle pieces that once you put it together, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I do. Somewhere else in here, I didn't like mark it. I just kind of made a chuckle. Is Roderick makes the point to point out that kind of early colonies, kind of groups of people, particular ones that ended up with less women for a whole host of reasons, they didn't do so hot. So, kind of really giving nod here to like, it's really kind of like women are kind of the heartbeat of a lot of your societal needs because they're doing the stuff that is the quote, like maybe like invisible work.
Yeah, and I actually did, I think,
did you mark
highlight
it?
What you're talking about. I'm looking for it now. So page 60, I think, might be where it is that you're talking, and it's kind of starts off on page 59 about Jamestown. The colonization of Jamestown in Virginia almost failed because there were so few women in the original party of settlers. Mm-hmm. The men who had come to the New World expecting to find easy fortune were unwilling and unable to do what was considered women's work, cooking, washing, sewing, and so forth. Well, God forbid you keep yourself alive. And then, goes on further, but then it says, so Alexis de Tocqueville wrote in the 1830s, after having twice observed this country, if anyone asks me what I think is the chief cause of the extraordinary prosperity and growing power of the nation, I should answer that it is due to the superiority of their women. Thank you, Alexis de Tocqueville. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Marianne also made note of that. She, before you even got there, she was like, page 61. Yep. I am.
But yes, I just to kind of, and I think what Marianne is probably referencing, and to kind of keep going on this, is, let's see that. So on page 61, he talks about, 1750 to 1815, women were involved. in maybe not necessarily like governance, but they were heavily involved. They were merchants. They were right there beside their husbands, like in terms of like the colonial pioneer kind of ethic of like, granted, wealthy people probably came from England with their enslaved persons. Mm-hmm. Think about that. But some of these more like just, I'm gonna test my mettle in the new world. The women were right there beside their husbands, chopping down trees and building the house. Like they weren't just sitting by tending a fire and like birthing babies. They did hard work too.
Right, until we get to the rise of the cult of domesticity.
Yes, and so here on 61, it's the first sort of column. Women would eventually assume the role of homemaker in this country as this country became industrialized in the mid-19th century, and the prevailing view came to be that most occupations were unsuitable for women or incompatible with their work in the home. Not until women began to stay at home rather than entering the marketplace were quilts truly made in substantial numbers. So, ew.
And we're still paying for that shift in thought today.
Yeah, exactly. They're, and if we think historically, like, oh gosh, I'm blanking on her name. She wrote The Good Wife, Good Wives, Laurel Thatcher Horton. She talks about, Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. Laurel Horton is one of our colleagues.
Well, that's what
Laurel
Thatcher
Ulrich. Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. She, she writes a lot about this, and women had this, like, it was this very, like, this dichotomy, like, going all the way back to, like, the Puritans in, not just Jamestown, but the Puritans in New England was what she was really looking at. And the women were definitely involved. And if their husband died, they stepped up even a notch higher, but they still were not allowed to be involved in governance and in religion, in religious leadership, I guess. So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah.
All right. Let me
Okay.
pull you back a little bit
Yes.
because we're getting a little bit ahead, Mary, and we will get to your point on 58. But in terms of having photos to look at, this one obviously was just like, let's open with a bang. And, to me, I'm obviously like, well, I'm clearly seeing the influence here, from like England of, embroidery
Yeah,
and
cruel.
medallion and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But also just I was just like, oh my God, 1795 and a name. Oh,
Right? I know.
so
Yeah.
that made me so excited. Ugh, I don't know which one it is. We're just gonna have to be I'm just gonna keep getting rid of them though. Like you would think they'd be in order, but
Um,
they're not because I pulled up something.
yeah, this happened to me also with getting stuff out of order in the folder. Do you have one for the white work quilt on page 46?
I do not.
Okay, well, I just want to mention, like, knock me over with a feather. That thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And it again, it's another one of those things when you really think about it, it makes sense that, as Marianne said, like, quilts are almost always owned by the upper class. Like, who could afford to have fabric tied up in something like this? This beautiful white work. I mean, first it's white. Like, white was like a flex. If you had linens, if you had things that were white, they always had to be, kept clean. And it was either through not using them at all or vigorous laundering. So,
well, even at that point where I again, I don't remember where it's mentioned, just that it's mentioned that like there was a fad of like all white bedrooms. No.
oh my gosh, that whole idea of like every whole white bedrooms. I can't even picture that, except in a modern sense, because I mean I know there are people that do that in a modern sense. Hey Brenda. Oh, you haven't missed much. Just us nattering. But I mean, you think about all white stuff today, people that have the all white carpet and the white couch, and it's like, you clearly don't have children or pets.
Yeah, well, even just humans.
You've never sat on your couch eating a hot dog, have you, with mustard?
No, and that chaise that I purchased that's all white, you best believe there is like a 1/4 inch thick layer of like Scotch Guard on that thing because
Or a husband. Right.
and yeah, pet everything. But I did,
Yes.
so I didn't take a picture of that white work because it just probably wasn't going to show up super great.
Yeah, it's I'm pleased that, I mean, I think the photographer, so it's from American Hurrah, but this Arcade Press, they got a really good picture of it.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job of getting the
so difficult. I mean, it's
changes of
difficult to photograph quilts, period. Those of you who are makers know this. But a white work quilt, like, I mean, come on, that's near impossible. So they did a nice job. I like this quilt. I don't know what it is about this, because
it's just simplistically pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, and to me, like, I want to say here, maybe did he say something about like maybe some like a favorite fabric? Yeah, a desire to recycle a favorite fabric. Might be the reason that this is a little like random.
Yeah, this one is 1785 to 1800 New England wood block and roller printed cottons. Some areas of block print are penciled blue. We talked about that in last week. And yeah, this one, like he doesn't mention this actually, I don't think at all really. But one kind of thing to help you realize it's New England is typically New England seems to be the only regional place where you find the 4-poster cutouts.
Yeah.
And it's funny, a friend of ours was over here yesterday helping me take some quilt photos. That was an odyssey. To tell you about that on Saturday. And one of them literally has the teeniest little cutout. It's like, I don't know, 2 inches. It is so, like, you can miss it so easily. It is so stinking cute and little. And Anywho, it was just
That's
it was
funny.
just cute. Yeah,
I like
guess
those
it's
ones that are
different.
round and have sometimes they have ties.
Yeah, there's so
I always
many
like
different
those.
kinds. I like the ones that kind of like go in and like this like weird like they're either square or round, and then they do this like deep triangular cut
Mm-hmm.
in because maybe like the poster is like really thin. Um, let's see. So on page 48 here, I have a quote at the very bottom of the first column. The style of those early quilts was determined by a combination of three primary influences: the needlecraft traditions that the immigrants brought with them, despite what some people think that we just made it all, invented it here. The patterns of trade between Europe and the New World, and the stresses of daily life. The last two influences affected more than quilts. They shaped the nation as a whole. I really am enjoying this writing.
Yeah, I think that so having read this book, I feel like my quilt scholarship has been a little backwards. having read this having read this book like several years after I've read a whole bunch of other stuff. I feel like I'm learning more like some of the history than necessarily quilt stuff, because some of the quilt stuff I'm like, oh, I already knew that.
Well, didn't we? This reminds me when we read the dress diary, and it brought in so much outside context that we were like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, it's like some like dots got connected, or like, there was a puzzle piece that I'd been missing all along and now it's snapped into place. But also the other thing I'm enjoying, besides learning like some historical stuff that kind of has been clicking for me, these beautiful passages. Like, I have one that I would like to read later on when we get there, but yeah.
So Brenda sees a face behind the upper blocks.
Blocks. Yeah, I guess I can see it.
Yeah, I think like there's some kind of like I wonder if the back of this, if we'd see some staining and stuff, if some of that could be coming through. But that and like the way some of these early fabrics are, like especially this, it is totally like magic eye. If you guys
Yeah.
remember those books from like the 90s,
Yes.
it totally reminds me of that. Okay, so next here we have this gorgeous lady on 49.
Ah, yes, Lakma.
Yeah, there were a number
I
of books in here from Lakma.
I forgot. I meant to grab my Wearable Prince book, because she shows this, and she has a diagram of the multiple resist painting and indigo dippings that result in this.
Oh.
Yeah. This one is more, I would say this one's more primitive than the one on the facing page, which is like that, kind of has that lattice around it. It's like a basket of stuff, flowers, and maybe, is there fruit in there? No, those are just all flowers. Yeah, this one's a little bit more, I think, like crude than that one. But this one, I think you really do understand when you look at it, how that resist worked. And it's crazy to me. Like, just because I feel like you typically, with resist, you're like doing background first. But in this case, the background's white. So it had to be like completely masked out with that resist.
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that part when I was looking at this. By the way, this is whole cloth, blue resist, circa 1760 to 1780. And what's kind of funny is when you're just kind of talking about, those time periods, that may not feel that old. I mean, it's old, but just in terms of things, that may not feel that old. But when we start talking about quilts here, it's pretty darn old, because we just like don't really have.
Yeah, 1760 feels old to me.
Yep. Well, but I mean, especially as soon as we get to like, once we get to like 1820 and back, I'm really like, oh.
Yeah, that's exactly that's kind of how I think. I think I kind of feel this connection to the Baltimore album quilt, 1840s, 45 to 50 something. but I feel like anything before that is like real old. You know, my house is 1853. So I feel like that's the dividing line for me, is like the 1840s, 1850s. And I feel this connection to those people in, you know, as we move along. But yeah, before that, I'm like, well, that's getting kind of old.
Yeah, this quilt is 1840. And
Very
I mean,
ancient.
we know that from, you know, a date on the back, as well as the other hallmarks of that period of quilts. But that's, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, because you might remember better than I am right now. I think this is probably the oldest quilt in the house.
Yeah, I think it might be.
I might have something from the 1830s, but I feel
Yeah.
like maybe the oldest in the house.
Yeah.
Majority, I mean, and I have a lot of quilts from like the 1800s, but they're all going to be late 1880, man. Phew! That is just the mother load, I feel. And
Yeah.
Brenda commented that this particular bird looks a lot more lifelike than a lot of other prints. And you know, you're right. They really did put a lot of.
Yeah, when I said crude, I mean that there's not like a super detail. Like you don't see any like really fine lines. You know, the lines that are in the bird, you know, the denoting the feathers and lines on the flowers and stuff. They're not quite as fine as what you might see, you know, with block prints. So
Marian just said, would love to read a book on the stories behind these quilts being preserved to today. Oh. Yeah, that could be interspersed with like diary passages about making them. I'm just like, I've got a note here. Let's think. No, that's not important for me. Told you I'm marking up my book. Okay, so I've gotta give me a second here to get another photo.
So we are actually approaching, maybe you have a picture of one of these other quilts, but we're approaching the John Hewson stuff. And I do have to say, and I have not had a chance to put the card on our video from last week, we made a mistake. Mm-hmm. We started talking about broderie purse when we were looking at a John Hewson panel, or, you know, chintz panel. So that, and there's a picture of it again on page 54, but it's the kind of urn vase kind of thing with the flowers, you know, the spray of flowers, and then you've got the butterflies, and you've got the birds. That is not broderie purse. That was printed like that.
Okay, hold on. You're really jumping ahead of me here.
Sorry, I wanted to mention it, that, you know, we made that mistake.
Have a photo of that quilt.
Okay, sorry.
No,
I didn't mean to jump the gun.
You are jumping the gun, so let me put that up instead. We're just gonna have to go backwards after. Okay, so before we were looking at just the center panel here of this, which, just looking at it, looks 100% broderie purse to me. I kind of wish this legacy of John Hewson had showed up before, like, they put this panel in, because you know something.
Well, I mean,
I didn't really know much about any of this.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it shows up in multiple quilts, I mean, it's kind of like, when do you talk about it? Yeah, but so I would say that, you know, some of the things we know about John Hewson, prolific printer, wealthy. I'm trying to think, was Hewson the one that snuck some people into the country? I can't remember. You know, because there was quite a bit of, you know, heads butting between American printers and in England and France, and the technology and, you know, corporate espionage and all that kind of stuff. I can't remember if Hewson was involved in any of that, but I do know that there are no, to this date, I don't think there are any existing swatch books from Hewson's factory. So it's either things that are documented like this, that we know this was a Hewson print. And I think Florence Pito talks about a quilt, and I'm blanking on what quilt it was, but it was suggested that the girls, it was the daughters of this family, had made this quilt, and they think that it's primarily Houston prints. That they had made dresses, and I think that was their father was like a good friend of Houston, or was one of Houston's designers, or something like that.
Huh.
And so they think that that quilt is like a swatch book of Houston prints. And that's documented. I think it's in Historical Quilts and Coverlets by Florence Pito.
Yeah, so by as of the printing of this book, I don't know if it's updated since then, but the count of Houston textiles, like the 14 of them, 10 quilts, 7 of which are in museums, 2 complete printed spreads, which are unquilted, and 2 printed handkerchiefs. So yeah, I'm really curious. I don't know who would be keeping tabs on that right now, but I'm really curious if there's been, because like reading this little like legacy thing here, some of the people that like discovered, this quilt in the like a thrift store and like this, and I'm like, I wonder, there will definitely be more discoveries like that, because we're coming into like this age of minimalist, younger generations don't want the stuff of
Yeah.
their grandparents and their parents, and they don't have the same kind of connections to things, and as the boomer generation goes, that held on to a lot of stuff. Like my mom had a lot of my grandparents for nothing that matters other than we have like the automatic like chair that they bought for my grandma when she couldn't get up anymore. It's not anything that matters.
Right.
But as those people start to go, and people start to just be like, whatever, bring in an estate, auction plate, whatever, they'll definitely find more things. Maybe not to the amount that they were being discovered in,
Right.
the 70s, 80s, 90s, but there will definitely be things to find or refind that like were found a while ago and then ended up in a collection. And
that's one of the things that I think about a lot is I think that there of course is, sure, there's stuff out there somewhere, tucked away in families, and especially because people live longer. So but I also think there might be cases of a refinding, because you think about, we know enough people, museum folk, that have told us, well, this was in the archives, but like it had just been like set aside, or this was in some stuff that was donated that the curator or the collections manager never had time to deal with, so it was just packed in this, and I can see definitely really amazing things coming out of like the refinding in institutions, for sure.
Well, especially after reading things like what was it? Oh yeah, like this quilt that Florence Pito found in Massachusetts that had a Houston printed center panel, and it was lost in a fire.
Yeah, that one made me sad. Lost in a fire.
Yeah, like, and finding quilts, like people are still right now, people are finding like good antique quilts at flea markets and Goodwill, and from quote the bins. I don't have a Goodwill close to me that does that. I actually don't really have. There's not a lot of Goodwills in Massachusetts, at least not in my area. So your eyes peeled.
Yeah, we have Goodwills. I actually went to 2 this weekend with my son and I. That's one of our little like togetherness. We find weird junk at thrift stores.
That's your togetherness. That's cute.
I bought a $3 pair of jeans that actually fit. So it was a banner weekend for
just
me.
The fact that you could find jeans that fit as a woman in this world,
Yes. And they cost $3.
I feel like that's the hardest thing that we have to do out in the world here, is find jeans that fit. Okay. I finally have few enough photos that all the thumbnails will pop up for me.
Okay.
So going back a little bit here, this is on page 53, and this quilt is so freaking amazing. Oop, that's too much. So
So this is
amazing.
the Anne Daggs quilt.
Mm-hmm. So this is 1850 to 1860. And this has the close up is on the adjacent page there. This has so many different elements of like cool stuff. And one of them that's like really interesting to me is these little like flowers that, from far away to me automatically look, like hexy, paper
Mm-hmm.
piecing. They're not though. They're, if you look at the close up on the other page, they're just cut
Yeah, just cut
like
out
little
like.
rounds. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
they're just cut little rounds. Um
Yeah, this is. I think I think her quilt was very interesting.
yeah, it's got so much stuff going on. So this is Central Medallion 1818. It's Rochester, New York. Cottons appliqued and embroidered. Inscription in wool cross stitch reads done by Anne Daggs, the 1 of May 1818. I really want to know what this quilt sold for because it came from America Hurrah, so they're a dealer, assuming it sold. And it's not in their personal collection. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it looks to be like the at least just based on the this detail, it looks like it's in really pristine condition.
yeah, yeah, it's looking really, really good. I would really like to see it. I also feel like a number of our friends, our dealer museum friends, might know where some of these are.
Yeah, I suspect that too, and I think that we could figure it out if we had the time. Sadly.
Yeah, maybe you know, a couple here and there. Hopefully what will happen and what often does happen is our friends might watch our stream and then email us with some information that they might know that's extra to it was one of our friends that emailed us and was like, "Y'all, that's not Broderie purse." And we went, "Oh my
Well,
God."
actually, I figured it out the day that she emailed us because I was looking at stuff for my own stream and I was like, wait a minute. Houston made panels? Oh no, Houston made panels. I was like, oh no, I think that was a panel.
But I will say that's one of the things about doing this the way that we're doing it is kind of we're learning and investigating and reading things in real time, which means we might make assumptions about things that we find out later in the book aren't right. And I do want to say for anybody that ever feels discouraged or like they're stupid or silly or they don't know anything, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, oh yeah, it's something different, and move on with your
Yeah.
life.
The only time it's not okay to be wrong is when you find out the truth, but you double down on being wrong. That is where I feel like, we need to be flexible in our beliefs, right?
Well, and you don't need to be embarrassed to be like, oh yeah, I wasn't right about that. It's actually this thing. I don't know about anybody else, but I can actually know 100% what something is, and I might just misspeak about what it is. And it's okay to just be like, oh yeah, by the way, I said this, I meant that. So, anywho, moving on. As we go into the next pages here of like 54, 55, I did not take a picture of the quilt that's on 54, even though it's awesome, but I didn't because I was going to pull up the one we looked at last time. But an interesting little tidbit here that I don't really think about very much. But when I stopped to think about it after reading this, I was like, huh, maybe I almost wanted to pull out every single quilt I have and pick out ones I know that are from the South and do a comparison. So at the very top here of the first column of page 65 or 55, we have 1620 to 1680 through the next century into the early 1800s. Quilts in the southern colonies were very likely constructed with finer stitchery and more elaborate fabrics than those of the northern colonies. And when I'm thinking about times that I'm seeing southern quilts, and it's not to say that northern New England quilts aren't awesome, but I do find that their fabrics can often be, especially the backing, rougher, maybe homemade, you know, and southern quilts I do notice are very thin, obviously climate for one, but they often have really, really amazing stitching, really awesome, definitely awesome looking fabrics. And it makes me want to like, I want, has anyone written about that? Like kind of the juxtaposition of the style?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so his footnote is, or the end note, this is from Patsy and Myron Orlovsky's book, Quilts in America, that they wrote in 1974, which I have. I didn't pull it out, obviously, because I didn't pay much attention to this footnote. So yeah, I don't know how extensively they wrote about it in their book, but yeah, I mean, they documented it in 1974, so you know, I would guess they or somebody had looked at this, and from 1974 to 1995, when this is written in 1995, right? 1994. Let me double check
I don't know.
here.
You could look.
Bum, bum, bum. 93.
Wow.
So from 74 to 93.
You know, it feels awfully progressive for 93.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Marianne just said that none of her southern relatives had quilts in contrast with her northern ones. You know, I don't think any of my relatives on either side were ever...
And see, it's funny because all of and I don't have northern relatives. All of my relatives are from Virginia South. And the great-grandmothers, at least my great-grandmothers, they made quilts, had quilts. But I don't know before them. I don't know.
Well, all of my dad's from Georgia. My mom is from Florida. And I have not heard a single peep about quilts on either side before getting to my mom. That being said, were both families that didn't talk about things.
Well, you know, and I mean, I go back to like, there is a point when, you know, my family from Virginia and South, and they never left where they were. So, you know, they might have moved a state north, a state south, like they didn't go far. So I think there was probably a little bit more of like, I don't know, like sort of that homestead history kind of was just there. But I kind of feel like, you know, people that were maybe, you know, within these generations we're talking about, these sort of 20th century generations, I could definitely see people that, you know, like Marianne's describing, parents that, you know, or in your case, parents from the South, but, you know, at some point along there, the quilting people kind of got lost in the history, and you've got, you know, descendants that moved away. And I see where that there's that kind of break because, you know, at some point quilts were not, I mean, just like underwear. Like, we don't know a whole lot about underwear because just like nobody talked about it.
But do you want to talk about it?
No. That was a stupid offhand comment, but
but my mom keeping things from my grandparents, one thing that she kept is a box full of photos, old photos, 1800s photos, early 1900s photos, like the old stuff. I have no idea who they are. But I've never also gone through it, and there are pictures of objects. So I'm almost kind of like, given that we know that there was a fad to take pictures with your quilts, I'm almost kind of like, oh my God, am I going to go through that thing and find a quilt?
That would be really cool.
And then also, one thing, as much as I definitely have issues with AI stuff and where some of that technology is going. One place I hope that some of that technology will go is that we can get to a point with like our genealogical softwares and things where you can image search photos to then link up with people where you
Yeah.
might have a photo.
I would not be surprised if the major consumer genealogical databases aren't already doing something like that.
Well, I
Or,
mean, get
you
it
know,
big
are
enough
in
to
the
where it would
process.
probably work for most people. It probably wouldn't work for, but I'm bummed that like not, at least none that I've noticed, none of these photos are labeled. Um,
Yeah, Jen says all of her old pictures were taken in studios, not quilts. No quilts. I can say I don't think that, I mean, as much as my relatives did quilts and were involved, had quilts, I can't think of any pictures, that were in albums. And we have a lot of those too, those old pictures that nobody remembers anymore. Nobody who's alive today remembers anymore who they were. But I don't think we have a lot that would really shows like furnishings, home furnishings or anything like
yeah,
that.
maybe we'll have to do a stream where I go through the box of photos.
Oh, that would be
We'll just
fun.
we'll
Yeah.
just and then you'll see me like just turn into a ghost because like a huge spider crawls at her. And you're just like, and Jill passed away.
um,
So
Not to digress us, but have you ever seen those pictures? And I think they're cabinet cards. Of the Invisible Mother.
maybe
It's literally they drape a blanket or a quilt, but it generally seems to be solid color, like it's fabric. It's not. I don't think it's usually quilts, but they're draped over the mother, and the mother is kind of holding the child, but the mother is supposed to be like not there. But you could tell it's a person with stuff draped over them holding a baby. It's weird. They're creepy.
Do you know that? Do you know that when I was 16, 17, I worked in a photo lab for a year. Coolest job I ever had. And one of the things that we had to do that you didn't go to the post office for was take passport photos.
Ah,
And
yes.
they still did that for babies with passport photos.
Oh, cover the mom up so they can
Yeah,
hold the
because
baby.
it has to be a white background. And I'll tell you, the worst thing on the planet was getting the baby to look like right here on me while I'm taking the photo, because you have to be able to see their eyes because, you know, babies might, I don't know, be like
The dead
smuggling
people.
themselves. It was.
Oh no, lots of dead people in your family pictures too? See,
Mm,
I feel like because for some reason, Facebook, I don't like to spend time on Facebook, but I end up having to be there for,
yeah, stop
us
complaining
and
about
other
it.
things. But anyway, for some reason, Facebook, the algorithm likes to serve up these cabinet card groups, and sometimes they're really cool old pictures, and so I like to look at them. When they show up in my stream. But there's a lot of them that where everyone will automatically say, "Oh my God, they're dead. Somebody's dead. They're dead," and everybody's like, "No, they're not." So
Yeah, because they'd be like, the eyes are open. Yeah, gotta love Victorian death culture.
yeah.
All right, we've digressed.
Yes.
Moving along.
Back to it.
So, yeah, a couple of things here. One really noticeable just tidbit is on page 55, second column to the top. Homemade fabrics were taken to printers for application of pattern. I did not know that. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that you had Kinkos down the street that could like print on your homemade fabric for you. I think that's really awesome, and like I think that should be like brought back. I think that's incredibly cool.
Yeah, I mean it is interesting. Yeah, I paid attention more to the fact that the Southerners were using chintzes and palampours. The odd thing that we are talking about here, because yeah, that I don't know why that didn't stand out to me.
So I did also want to bring to attention that we do start talking a bit about enslaved people and quilt production in actually most of that second column. And he does make sure to point out that it must be remembered that until the mid 19th century, slavery was practiced in all areas of the country. Some people like to paint the North as some bright, shining beacon of virtue. And
there is
true.
a lecturer in our, in as one of our colleagues, that she frequently quotes when she talks about, enslaved production, that, yes, the North needs to not act like they were lily white, because, like, without, so virtuous, because Rhode Island, more enslaved people entered Rhode Island than all the southern colonies put together. So, Rhode Island. Hope you've made up for it.
Where was all the enslaved cotton production going? To the mills of New England to be, produced into cloth. Like, come on now. So, what's interesting here is, I'm going to read a quote here. There are two schools of thought regarding the contribution of enslaved people to the general body of needlework. One school holds that, with every woman's life so full of heavy labor, those who were rich enough to own slaves would have assigned them to the tedious work of making bed coverings. Others suggest that the availability of labor for routine tasks would free the plantation mistress or New England merchant's wife to return to the needle. That's interesting. I don't know that I've really paid attention to those being two different schools of thought, but it makes sense that they would be two different schools of thought. Perhaps the explanation closest to the truth is that enslaved people and slave owners worked together on some quilts and independently on others. I think I could probably get on board with that analysis. That seems to make some good sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely a mixed bag all the way around. There's definitely documented quilts out there that were 100% made by enslaved women. They had the family had the documentation to prove it. But yeah, I think there was, a lot more.
And we definitely know that there are way more quilts out there attributed to a white wealthy maker. That definitely is either not wholly her work or not at all her work.
Right. Yeah.
Far more than we have attributional work. And I am very excited that there's going to be more discussion on African American women later on in the book. So let me get my next photo here. Like I said, one of the reason I like so many and it's a problem is because I pulled up some old photos of a quilt in the very end of the next chapter. Look at it more closely because I already had pictures. So yay, this is like really cool.
So this is the quilt that's on page 59.
Yes. And in the gradual rise in quilt ownership, the very bottom of that, there's a dramatic increase in quilt ownership in the period between 1800 and 1820. And there's been a number of lectures, I think, and other tidbits of things we've been reading in other books throughout, where it really starts to talk about quilts showing up in like the home inventories.
The inventories, yeah.
Of things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the statistics that he provided were really interesting. 10% in 1710, and then by 1820, so 100 years later,
so at the
63%.
So at the top of 59 on the first column, I'd actually blocked this whole thing out, and I titled it "Who Owned Quilts and How Many?" The study, he talks about a study. The study showed that in 1710, only 10% of the population owned a quilt. 63% listed a quilt among their household goods. The ownership of quilts had a direct correlation with the numbers of households with increased wealth.
Yeah.
82% of all quilts were owned by men with enslaved people.
Yeah, so 82% of
That's,
ye old enslavers.
well,
I mean,
that's,
again,
that's
again,
one
like,
thing where I'm like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel surprised by it, but then again, I'm like, yeah, it's just another one of those things when you pull back and you look at the big picture, put all the puzzle pieces together, it makes sense. That because of the cost of fabric
And
and
then
the effort
it also says
and,
here, it also says it must be remembered that only men could own real property during the period of time these inventories were made.
right.
And then it says, this was very interesting, quilt frames too proved to be found almost exclusively in households with enslaved people. I found that very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then it does point out that this study is not sufficient to give like a whole huge picture because it's focusing on, but it gives you a really good idea of what the view might look like from 10,000 feet if you're looking at a whole big swath. Because again, the North is not a virtuous, innocent place.
Right. Yeah.
We have plenty of blood on our hands from that period up here as well.
Yeah.
So this quilt is a central medallion, 1800 to 1825. This looks brand spanking new.
Yeah, and this is one of those ones. This is like one of the buff and blues, right? I thought those were like 1830s.
Oh, I don't know enough about those.
Well, it's the color of the fabrics,
I can't. Yeah, I don't know enough about those.
I don't either.
I'm not sure. This looks like really. I'm looking at some of the fabrics. I thought maybe some of the browns had. I mean, they definitely look like they've got some wear to them. But it's so funny by the way they took this photo. It actually also looks like it's part of the print. But I can only tell now as I'm looking closer. But regardless, now this is the kind of I could never make this because like once we get into that scalloped stuff, like whoo, this is one worth studying.
Yeah, the clamshells in the corners of the center medallion, which is also so intricate, it's mind-boggling. There was a lot went into this thing.
Yeah. Going back to my discussion of family and photos here, Marianne had said, I kind of want to go to Ancestry to look at wills. Oh, I'm sorry. This is talking about the inventories. To look at wills to see if quilts were listed as property specifically. And it said, full text search on family search will let you pull up a large search. Interesting. Have you done any of that, Stephanie, in any of your searching?
I've done a little bit of like will and probate type stuff, but I haven't. And there is one I do need to look at for Dutton, and I've just put it off because it's one of those. It's one that's not online, so I have to go find it. And in his case, I have to go to Delaware, so because where his mother was originally from. So yeah, it's it's not quite as easy as like a census. Looking at a census, because a census is you're just like you got that section, those lines, and that's what it is. When you look at the wills and the probate and stuff, you have to like often find it in a book, and then in the book, then you have to use the number and then find the actual documents, and there's like extra steps in it. To me, like, and this is just me, I'm sure genealogists would be like, oh, shut your mouth. I feel like wills and probate and all that is some of the most difficult, like, of general genealogy research to do, in my opinion. Yeah.
That doesn't sound like fun. All right, moving on here because it is just see what the
Well, we already hit the next 2 pages, which I had marked out. 60 and 61. We already covered that.
Oh yeah, we already talked about those.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just stop sharing.
I don't know if you have anything for the pillar print on page 62, but my gosh,
because I don't, because we pillared a whole lot, and I figured it's so huge.
I found this one to be interesting because the pillars are not your standard, like the stripy pillars. These appear to be made of like bricks.
They look like brick.
Yeah, I thought those were interesting.
Also, just this little tidbit here: there were no true block quilts until the early 19th century. And
I mean, because what we see things in the 1700s are either these medallion type things or they're whole cloth.
Yeah, and actually I was just thinking, when we're talking about the oldest quilt, I have an English medallion quilt that's 1820.
Ah, yes, I forgot about that one. But yeah, the medallions, I mean, I kind of feel like there are no true block quilts. I mean, I feel like that's a little bit of a and I get the point. I understand what he's saying. I understand what he's saying. Yeah, he's talking about like this situation where you've got lined up blocks, but they did make blocks, repetitive blocks in medallion quilts. They just weren't like a whole composition. They were only a piece. Like they were set as a border typically.
Well, and I think the point also is more so because you have blocks and medallion quilts, but the medallion kind of style and structure is still very much coming from Europe. Whereas once we get into like the demarcation here of like the block, the block quilts, I feel like that might be kind of the line where you talk like, now we've gotten into like an American style.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing really catastrophic for me in this whole cloth quilt section. I do like the fact that he points out that in some whole cloth quilts, bingo, bingo, bango, bongo behind me here, the fabric becomes the decorative aspect of the quilt.
Right.
You don't need blocks. And that, again, is one reason why I'm like, ooh, we will put out a chintz whole cloth.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it makes sense. You've got this beautiful fabric that is, either just so lovely, why cut it up, or it's such a statement, like this pillar print. Or you've got something where you really want to showcase the quilting and don't worry about other fabrics. The one thing that I had in this section is actually on the next page, so I didn't want to. I did not realize. So at the very start here, we've got the popularity of all whites was inspired by the desire to attain classical purity and simplicity in design. So, like that, this time period, yes, this Greco-Roman, like the classical stuff. But I did not realize, in response to the discovery of the buried cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, I didn't realize that. That spawned the neoclassical school of design. I did not realize that that's where that came from. I just kind of assumed, the Regency period, early 1800s, people are like, yeah, we're into this Greco-Roman stuff. But the reason they're into it is because, I guess, you've got this stuff going on in Italy and Europe, and all that is free-flowing over here.
Well, I mean, I guess it would be along the same lines as, like, look at all the influence that the discovery of King Tut's tomb.
Right, yeah, in the 20s, yeah.
The same kind of thing. And then also, I mean, not to digress, but if you get into those actual studies at all in classics and stuff, and part of kind of the religious fervor was, if you remember, one of the big hoo-hoos about Pompeii is they discovered the casts of bodies. So that kind of like, you become a face-to-face with a mortality that kind of people, I mean, when you have an awakening of religion, it's almost like, oh my God, people are scared. How can we control them? So, Yeah. Have you ever seen those? I've seen them. They went on
The
a tour
cast.
once, those
I
casts.
don't think I've ever seen any like in person. I don't think so.
Yeah. Our science museum years ago had a whole hi
Hi,
Greenland quilter
Greenland quilter
Katie.
Katie.
You look like a first time chat. Nice to see you. Um, they went on a tour. They were here at the Science Museum, and the don't get me wrong, like the bodies, they look like bodies. They're in the shape of bodies, but there's no
Uh-huh.
defining characteristics.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know which one I was the most upset about? The dog,
Oh yes, I have seen pictures of the dog. Yeah.
because way more defined human bodies.
Oh, it's your first
Hey,
time. Well, welcome, welcome,
thanks for
welcome.
visiting our
Thanks for
channel.
coming.
If you're gonna stick around,
Yeah, we
I
are.
hope
Just to
you'll
let you know,
subscribe and hang out with us more often.
we're working on this book here.
Mm-hmm.
Um.
And
So you got
go ahead,
anything
sorry.
else?
Greco-Roman.
I just got anything else here in this chapter? There's a lot about medallions and white work and.
Well, I have. Hold on. Where? Okay, that's where. Where is aha? Um. So this, I feel like this is a good moment for anyone that's not ultra familiar with it to give a plug to the Quilt Index, and
Yes.
um,
Ooh.
it's a free resource for documenting quilts. You can search a buttload of quilts. And one of the reasons I bring it up in this moment is this quilt here in 65 is part of the New England Quilt Museum.
Yeah, I was gonna say this
where
is
I
the quilt, right?
Yeah, it is. The color's just different.
Yeah.
I will say in person, the quilt is probably a little closer to the orangey. And I don't know, let's see. I don't know when this quilt was documented.
Yeah, it looks so
Um,
green on my
but
screen.
no, it's not just your screen. So I feel like we looked at an exhibit from them where this quilt was out on stream some point last couple years. Because this is one of those quilts they have to lay it on that big table.
Yeah.
But
I like the pillar print. I like the pillar print.
Yeah,
That
I
is
know
the
you
fall.
hate.
Don't
you
like the
hate-
middle.
Yeah, you hate the center.
It's the Palampour. It's the Palampour. I'm just not a big fan of the Palampour. The Palampour is very specifically the Tree of Life, and I don't know. I just don't love those. I have to respect the fact that they are painted. You know, they're supposed to be very lovely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of our dealer friends, I believe, has a beautiful, very old one hanging in their living room, I guess. Visited them back in New York in the fall, and I was just like, I don't like it, but my God, look at it.
Well, if you are quite finished, New England Quilt Museum has their catalog on the Quilt Index. They do not have a separate catalog on their website. All of it's done in the Quilt Index, as well as the entire Massachusetts Quilt Documentation Project. You can see right here. And oftentimes on days that we are doing documentation, the museum will sneak in a quilt or two that they haven't documented yet that then gets uploaded onto here. And you guys should totally use that to your advantage. For one, also to document your quilts. Look it up here. Over 102,000 quilts and counting.
I remember when they hit 100,000.
Really cool. Yep. It's a really cool resource. Also consider donating to them. They are a nonprofit. And they do like really awesome work. So I just want to take a second to piss Stephanie off with the Palampour.
With a Palampour.
Yeah. To talk about that. Okay, I'm just looking for where my next quilt is here. Okay. My next quilt is the next chapter. So let me just look here. Any last minute. Um,
Rise of the Cult
nope,
of
I don't think there's anything.
Domesticity.
I was gonna say, go ahead, say it. Are you gonna say it? Are you gonna say it right? You look like you were gonna struggle.
What,
It's a weird word.
domesticity?
Yeah.
Well, no, I did not struggle.
We-
You probably maybe have a picture of it. I don't know. But the very first quilt,
do.
once you go to this chapter, oh my gosh. Now that I love. It is lovely.
No, it's not that. Hold on. I can't see. I just can't see very well here.
It's not it either.
I can't see. Wait, maybe I actually have it. Sorry. No, it's not that. Hold. All my stuff is too tiny.
Then. So while she's looking, I will mention what I don't think we're going to have time for today is one of you who may or may not be here sent me a video that kind of refutes, or it talks about and debunks on page 73, where it talks about it was even rumored that some women wet their clothing so that it would cling more closely, enhancing the impression of carved marble. I will share the link to that because it's Bernadette Banner. You guys might know who she is. She is a
dress historian.
Yeah, dress historian. She's an artist. She's very interesting. She also does a lot of kind of like that investigational kind of archaeology type stuff. So let me find. Oh, sorry, my mouse is not working. Go ahead and talk while I find that link.
Me. So I took this picture in my lap in my living room while I was reading at like 3 p.m. when I had to turn my light on because the gloom and doom outside was so scary. And Marianne says she likes Bernadette Banner's linen analysis. Yeah, she is very
yeah, Bernadette is very interesting.
She does a lot. She puts a lot of scholarly effort into her stuff. Same with her friend Abby Cox, who's also a dress historian. She puts a lot of research into things. There's a whole group of gals on Facebook that are all friends. Excuse me, that are into that whole world. That is very interesting.
So I just put the link in there if you guys want to look at it. It's a fun video. She and her helper, I'm not sure who the woman was that was helping her, but yeah, they tried different methods of wetting a dress. Getting a dress wet. And actually, I don't often read comments on YouTube videos, but in this case, if you do watch the video, scroll through some of the comments too, because they were interesting. What some people had to say, I thought were kind of cool. So this quilt,
I think that you should do a study of this quilt.
Oh yeah.
It can be for me when you're done.
Oh, a study, not just study it, but like study it by making it. Is that what you're saying?
A study. You could do a quilt study.
I think not, but there's a lot that's going into this quilt. Yeah, I mean, I just look at some of the individual blocks. Most of them are fairly simple, but like the one that are all those tiny little wedges, that's a lot. And you got a piece, like how many of those? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Yeah. Oh no, there's more of them. No, maybe not. That's 8. No, there's more than that.
Yeah, there's more than that. It's probably like 16.
12. Looks like there's 12 of them that I can see.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
Oh, no, I was talking about the individual blocks, not how many things are in the block.
Oh.
I'm talking about the number of the blocks. So, yeah, however many fabrics are in there, many of those little wedges. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I would not hold your breath, my dear. Not coming for your birthday 2027.
I'm waiting on so many things.
So many things. Okay. So what did you have to say about this quilt?
That it's amazing. That's all.
Okay.
Moving on.
I concur.
It's I have definitely not been bored with the quilts. More LACMA here. This one's just interesting. Kind of looks like peacock
Yes.
feathers.
And it's kind of wonky, which is what I love. And it's because of, this is one of those things where they took some chintz, possibly a chintz panel or some chintz, and cut it to try and make this like whatever you want to call this frame. I guess you would call it a medallion frame. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's called Central Medallion, 1846. Cotton's applicated piece stuffed work. Inked inscribed center reads, Ellen Mary D., made by her affectionate mother, 1846. It's 105 and a half by 105 and a half.
That's a big quilt.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a big quilt.
Yeah, I like this one. I kind of like this one.
It's very unique. I can't say that I've really seen, especially, this foursome in the middle here.
Yeah, that piece of it I really like. That's that central piece. The wonkiness of that next ring is interesting because I like a wonky thing in a quilt. Yeah.
Well, and you notice too, it doesn't come together.
Right. Yeah. There's that little bit there, which is so strange.
You know what? Do you think that happened kind of like a binding, and you get like to the very end and you're missing just like this much of a binding?
And she was like, I'm so sick of this damn quilt at this point. I'm just going to leave it like that.
That's probably exactly what happened.
Yes. I feel you, sister. I feel you.
I didn't have much interesting going on in these couple of pages. One thing that, when you were talking about the part where, like women wet their clothing, this seems classical. I liked, have you heard of the publication, The Young Lady's Friend?
No.
Yeah. So it said, an article in 1837 issue of The Young Lady's Friend describing the new fashions. And my biggest takeaway in that moment is just like, oh, that's another publication that we should be like looking for, because I haven't heard of that one before. Are you writing that down?
Yeah, no, I'm rereading this. Yeah, that was one I was not familiar with. But, that time period, like the 1830s, there was kind of a proliferation of little magazines that were, little periodicals and stuff that were aimed at women.
Let's see. The next thing that I have here is this quilt. I did not try to take a picture of the one on the other page that claims at this point to be owned by our friend Stella Rubin, who is a dealer. I don't know if she still has this quilt or if she had sold it by this time. And I have a quilt very similar to this one that Stella Rubin has without the chintz on it, the broderie purse. But
it's your showstopper.
It is my showstopper. Did I put it in this show to stop things? I did not.
So what I paid attention to between these two quilts, I looked at this one in a little bit of detail because I love that stair step. They look like ziggurats. I really like that.
I like this. I thought that was really cool. I like how it comes together in this little moment.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I really like that. But also, what I really paid attention to is the tiny quilt. The tiny picture. The quilt's not tiny. The picture's tiny. Of this triple tulip. And I tried to find. I can't even find Alan Levine or Levin. I looked to see if I, like, are they famous collectors? I could not find anything that with them. I was really bummed because I was like, oh, I want to see that one, bigger. So yeah.
I did also grab a picture of the inscription. Made in 1832, made by Hannah Huxley. I like Huxley. Kentucky, cottons, pieced and appliqued, 112 by 108. And I'll tell you guys, my star quilt is also a behemoth.
It's gigantic.
And yeah, photo courtesy of Shelley Ziegert, who is another person.
Yeah, I noted that.
Yep, we know.
Well, yeah, I mean, Shelley, unfortunately, I think she passed away last year. Was it early last year? Yeah.
And then on the next...
One thing that one thing to note here about transportation improves, and he mentions, although rudimentary road systems had been built, they were financed primarily by tolls, which nearly everyone took pains to avoid paying. The road I live on was a major toll road, and all the way down into the city, and I live 15 miles outside the city, so all the way down into the city, there is like a toll gate road, and there's a whole neighborhood of toll road names. But I think it's my neighbor's house where the toll sat, because I'm like almost right at I'm like right at a intersection, like really close, like maybe 5 houses away. And I think my neighbor has this pillar that I think was originally part of the toll.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, when you hear about tolls, I mean, of course my mind always goes to like, the Jersey Turnpike, Pennsylvania Turnpike, like that kind of tolls. But definitely, like, that's how our roads got built, really, historically, was that like these little communities figured out a way to make the money to reimburse themselves for building the roads.
Mm-hmm. Next here we got this one.
What page is that one on?
This one's on 78.
Oh, I was trying to skip forward.
Mm-hmm.
This one I think is lovely. And those flower baskets, that border of flower baskets, I think is amazing.
Miriam, in Michigan, we call them speed traps.
Speed traps.
I mean, we have those too. They're just something different.
So I'm going to assume that this one's at the IQM. Yes, I see that now. I didn't pay attention.
Well, so what's interesting is when I was looking at this one, it says the Robert and Artist James collection, and I just went, huh. Now, since the Robert and Artist James collection is the major kind of founding collection of the IQM, I was just like, let's see if the IQM has it.
Yeah.
And lo and behold.
You can almost, anytime you see Robert and Artist James collection, you can almost guarantee if it's a major quilt, it's going to be at the IQM, because they gave a lot of quilts as the foundation of the International Quilt Museum.
Well, you never know. I could have gone to find this one, and the IQM might have been like, "No, we passed. We thought it was ugly."
Yeah, this is that one we didn't take.
Yeah, no, this one is like. Sorry,
yeah, this is a very lovely.
It's so incredibly quilt. Just like stylized and just.
Yeah.
Absolute perfection. With, when you see this rise of these big star quilts, I don't know that I've seen any that have this big star motif kind of like.
Yeah, no star. It's not. There's no star. It doesn't have the rays, the arms of the star, the rays of the star. Yeah. Yeah, I love what they did with this. I love
it's almost like someone started piecing the big, huge star, right? Got to this point, we're like, screw this.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, it's too much work, so I'll make it into a medallion.
Yeah, and when you look at this, I'm going to assume, I will assume that the border that are those flower baskets, that those are broderie purse. It's going to be my assumption, because of the fact that it's on a light background. And then you've got those blue sort of vines. And then you've got the green, sort of bunting, kind of festooning swags around the central. There's a lot of applique in this quilt, is the point I'm trying to make. I would venture to guess you're right. This is a person that went, I love applique, but I'm going to try to make one of these star quilts. And they went, we're going to redo this. We're going to make this much more of an applique quilt.
Yep. Moving along here into the realm of the friendship / album quilts, we were able to grab this beauty on page 80. And we've seen a lot of friendship album quilts. And just the general note here that the quilts first appeared in the 1840s during a time of extreme sentimentality, brought about in part by the great religious awakening that swept the country. And you see kind of the height of these here in the 1840s through the 50s. And the key differentiating aspects here. A friendship quilt is one in which the blocks are all of the same design. And then you have the quote friendship album where all of the blocks are different. And then this little note here that I thought was interesting because we've seen a lot of them in this area. The friendship album quilts were first made in the early 1840s in a relatively small geographic area focused in the Delaware Valley region of Pennsylvania and Maryland. But the trend spread rapidly along settlement lines. Yeah, so this other quilt here that's on page 82, I have seen so many of that block where you end up with the names in the center and things like that. And also, if you wanted to read a book that has a number of them where they can literally trace all the provenance, the book Maine Quilts has a lot of them in Maine tied to like the ladies' aid societies and stuff like that.
Yeah, do I have that book? No, I think I shelved it. Ironically, what I do have is this book. Which, it's funny. Look at this.
Oh,
so
yeah.
this is a Maryland album. Well, here's another quilt just like that one we just looked at, where they did not do the rays of the star. Yeah, this has got some similarities to that other quilt. Where was that one from? It doesn't say where it's really from. It was just artist and Robert James. Because yeah, I see some similarities. The stars. Yeah. You know, isn't it weird how... I'm hearing thunder again. Isn't it weird how that happens? Do you guys... Well, and I don't know how many piles of books y'all have. I know that I'm probably a little bit of an anomaly because I do have them stacked and stashed away everywhere. But sometimes I just pick up a book and I'll just, leaf through it and I'll be like, oh my gosh! That was just the thing I was looking at in this other book. And it's like this synchronicity. So... interesting.
Moving along.
Moving right along.
We have the website. Is it that? Is it that one? Yeah.
I was about to say, if you don't have the Lady of the Lake on page 84, I do really love that one too. Not really in love with the colors. I wish the colors were different, but
There's
I love
a ton of pink in it.
Yeah, but it's kind of a very pale, this is my pink.
It's looking pinkier.
This is my pink.
You know what? Maybe it started out that way and just faded.
Could be.
I like all the plaid in it, but along with this, he starts getting into, and funny, we keep saying he, but Roderick is not text here with Mary Elizabeth Johnson. So I don't know who's writing what, but they start talking about, women in manufacturing and the early mill girls. And interestingly enough, so we've got here, let's see, the eventual need for hundreds, even thousands of laborers led to what was known as the Waltham or Lowell system. It's Waltham, not Waltham. And funnily enough, Lowell...
I guess I've always said it wrong.
Yeah, it's Waltham. And that is the town my mother graduated high school from and the town that I was born in. And
Okay.
Lowell is where the New England Quilt Museum is. I walk through the mill complex to get to the museum. And so the system was first instituted in Waltham, Massachusetts, which is actually a suburb outside of Boston. So it's about 30 to 40 minutes south of Lowell.
Not to be confused with Walpole, which is where the prison is.
Well, that's where one of them are. There's one in Concord. That's a lot bigger.
If you ever watch Ray Donovan, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Walpole is significantly further south. Okay, the system was first instituted in Waltham, Massachusetts by Francis Cabot Lowell, a textile manufacturer. In his efforts to attract girls to come and work in his mill, he built boarding houses. Professor I was with at UMass Boston has done archaeology on one of those boarding houses, and hired respectable widows to enforce rigid rules of conduct for their young residents.
I thought that was interesting. Respectable widows.
Typically, curfew was 10 p.m. Regular church attendance was mandatory, and each factory girl was required to save part of her earnings. I found that, I don't know that I've ever heard of that, described at all as, like this Lowell system.
Yeah, I had not either. But, well, I guess maybe and I could be misattributing it, but I do know that it's some sort of factory town sort of situation. I know I've heard about curfews and church attendance, but I had not heard the part about saving their earnings. And I mean, that's a valiant thing to do, to teach these women this.
And it also talks about like some of their perks, like they had like these gorgeous kind of manufactured yards. They had libraries, which we're talking 1820s and 30s here. Providing libraries for women is awfully progressive.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I totally agree.
And
until it all fell apart.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, like it says here, the mill girls read voraciously and eventually even published a magazine called The Lowell Offering, which we do know about. And an article entitled The Patchwork Quilt appeared in an 1845 issue describing a quilt that its author worked on from childhood through adolescence to womanhood. It is one of the earliest descriptions of quilt making in American literature.
And I have pulled up on my phone. I did not have enough time to like dive deep into it, but I pulled up. You can find the Lowell Offering on it's the Hathi Trust, which is kind of like a Internet Archive kind of thing.
They have the whole thing, right?
Yeah, but I think they're directing you to it's like a redirect. I think it's Harvard. I think it's Harvard, and I think is it
don't you find
University of Michigan?
Weird? Don't you think it's kind of weird that it's Harvard, which I'm not going to lie, y'all, for all the stuff Harvard has, they don't make it easy for the layperson to use.
No, and I'm surprised that like something in Massachusetts doesn't have it. It's like weird to me.
Well, don't you think it's odd that right down the street from the mills is one, the Lowell Public Library, which is a massive city library. It's a beautiful building. And number two, like right next door is UMass Lowell.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the University of Massachusetts or like Boston University or something doesn't have, an archive, but
they might,
and it's just not connected to Hathi Trust. But in any event, I definitely I'm very interested in reading that particular article, but also just in general their writing. And I kind of scrolled through like the beginning one issue, and I mean it's poetry and kind of these sort of treatises that are, I mean, they're intelligently written. These are not like,
these are women that have had some good schooling. And a couple of blocks away from the New England Quilt Museum is the Boot Cotton Mills Museum. And they have a gift shop that has a ton of related books in it. Some I've never seen before, and it's not that like you can't get them online. It's just they're not popular. I keep meaning to go back over there and kind of make a list of what's over there, because Stephanie and I have thrown around the idea before of maybe reading a little bit of like the Lowell Girl mill history stuff here. Luckily, a lot of those books, they're not terribly thick. So, because some of it might be a little on the drier side than we might want, because it's a little more history context instead of like quilt immediate related. But just a thought. And let's see. Marianne said, I have a question on page 92. Let's see. I don't think
I knew we were gonna run out of time on this chapter. We've still got so many pages.
I don't think I have anything real important.
So one of my aha moments on page 85 was the labor reform. So the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association was one of the first labor unions. Did not know that. That was very good to hear. I also was very interested, and we don't have to spend any time on it, but the economic depression that he talks about, it lasted from 1839 to 1843. I've heard it referenced, but he's written about it in more detail than I've ever seen before. And I always, wonder, like, why is it that we don't like learn the interesting stuff in high school? Like, I know that this was in one ear, not the other, because it was definitely, all economic and blah. And, I had no interest in it. But when you get to like burning grain for fuel and all these kind of things, like, laborers demonstrating, I'm like, this is interesting stuff. Like, why didn't we learn this?
On 89, he talks about, we're migrating and things out to the West. And we've got a quote here for, quilts by the hundreds made the journey and were used for varied purposes. Many mentions are made of quilts as coverings for doors and windows, and thick comforts and quilts were used to line wagons, making them, as one woman wrote, impervious to wind and weather. They were wrapped around fragile china, used to pad and soften the wagon seats, and to protect the exposed sides of the wagons during Indian attacks. Another woman mentioned that hanging quilts on dirt walls of sod huts or on the underboarded parts of a log cabin made them seem home-like. And then further down, they talk about...
Yeah, I mean, I can say my great-grandmother, my grandmother talked about this very often. She grew up in a dog trot log cabin in South Carolina in the foothills of Appalachia. And my great-grandmother used quilts to keep, because she was a widow. My grandmother's father died when she was 2. So didn't have money, and heading into the Depression. So her quilts, she hung on the walls to keep the and I mean, South Carolina, granted, I realize it's not like New England or anything, but you're close to the mountains. It does get cold. And so, knowing that, and this is like early 20th century that I've heard these stories about my great grandmother, but, reading this, I'm like, some of these, like, people living in poverty, like during the early 20th century they were living very similarly to people that were pioneers, that were kind of like going out with little, of anything. I think you definitely can, make that connection to rural folks too. Like much later, we're still dealing with those kind of hardships and using quilts the same way. I thought that was interesting. I do have to note, though, on page 88, just the whole idea of this manifest destiny, and I realize he doesn't use that word, but that's what it was, heading on out to California, and it was a sense of adventure, but the women went reluctantly because it was mostly hardship for them. Can you imagine, I don't know how many times that, people have said, like when talking about this in conversations, can you imagine giving birth on the Oregon Trail? I mean,
no, the only thing I can imagine is dying of dysentery on the
Yes,
Oregon.
There is nothing I would rather do less other than maybe die of dysentery.
Yeah.
Right. And Marianne, yes, the publications extolling the virtues of domesticity sprouted like crabgrass. I noticed that he said that too. I thought that was good.
Marianne's question on 92. In the section here about Baltimore album quilts.
Yeah, so you're talking about fondue shaded effects. So fondue is another term for rainbow fabrics, and I don't know if I've talked about those a number of times on my stream, Marianne. I don't know if you had been tuned in on those when I've talked about it, but they're basically these fabrics that look like ombre, like they fade. And or sometimes it's almost like they fade in stripes. And sometimes it's multiple colors that sort of do that fade, and sometimes it's one color, and often it's blue. It's a technique that they used in roller printing where they literally were wiping the paint or the dye off the roller to make it do that, to make it fade that way. It was very labor intensive. But it was in a very early period they were making those. So like 1830s, 1840s. And they were very popular in Baltimore album quilts because they gave this like illusion of depth, based on the way you cut them. So that's what he's talking about there, those ombres. And I don't know if there's anything in here that is real close up where you can see it.
Not that I noticed.
Yeah.
Was there also something important you wanted to point out in this Baltimore album section?
Let me see.
I think you'd said you wanted to talk about something in here.
Yeah. So, so he talks about Axa Goodwin, and Axa Goodwin is an interesting character.
Where are you?
Just in general in this Baltimore album quilt section, 93 to 90 or 92 to 95. And I think he gets into Axa kind of in the, I guess, page 94, where he's talking about, is this where it is? He's talking about modern...
I see her on the third column of 92.
Oh, okay. So he did start talking about it earlier than that. Yeah. So, okay, yeah. So Axa Goodwin, and there is this quote he gives, and now I can't find it because I went off and explored it versus actually. Okay, so he talks about Dr. Dunton, and Dunton had talked to Axa Goodwin's daughter, I think. Yes. Okay, so here on page 92.
Before you go crazy here, Marianne's a little confused. She didn't find any reference to the technique when she was looking at it online.
So are you talking about that? There's like not a lot online about it, unfortunately. I don't have any of the books like sitting right here because I have researched it, because it was like, it was something that I was like, what is this? You probably won't find much online. So foundation. I'm not understanding what you're saying, Marianne. Give us more. So anyway, page 92, the very last paragraph. Axa Goodwin had acquired a skin disease from an African nut, which prevented her working with her hands, and that a group of quilts and coverlets had been made under her direction by a group of young African-American girls, possibly enslaved, who had been trained by her. So I'm like, an African nut? What? So... And I'm like, I've read Dr. Dunton's book, and I'm like, well, how did I miss that? So, the fondue technique. Okay, yeah, it's you won't. And I don't know why.
You're probably better off just looking at it for rainbow prints.
Yeah, rainbow prints might be, yeah. If you
I don't think I've ever heard of it referred to as fondue shaded before this book.
Oh, no, there's a bunch of Wearable Prints does, the design book that I did the other day on my stream does, Barbara Brackman does. Yeah, there's a lot of people that refer to it as fondue. And I guess fondue is, yeah. So yes, cashews! Okay, so there is no, so I have Dr. Dunton's book. I pulled it out, I reread those sections where he talks about this, and I'm like, this is so bizarre. Like, what on earth? And so I did a little Googling. The AI lied to me a bunch. I told it was lying to me. We finally distilled it down to what I think is accurate, is that it is possibly cashews or something called marking nut, and they are related. And this marking nut thing, I did not have time to, I did not have time to go further on that, to find out if this is like totally legit. But it's historically, the ink from this nut's shell was widely imported to dye or stamp fine luxury textiles. A single accidental contact with a raw marking nut or its concentrated resin could trigger an agonizing, blistered, and ulcerated chemical allergic dermatitis indistinguishable from severe poison ivy. And the marking nut it's called a bilawa or a malacca bean. It is heavily traded via East African and India maritime routes. So this one I'm kind of like, I don't know. But it says that it is related. It's in the same botanical family as the cashew, poison ivy, and mangoes. So, but going back to the cashew, crud. Let me get rid of this. It wanted to tell me it was Sojourner Truth I was talking about. I was like, no. But it's the So the African nut is where is it? Darn it. I think I accidentally closed the little thing. In any event, I think it's called urushiol, and it's basically that sticky, oily, like, stuff that is on poison ivy. It's mango, or also have it, like, I think on their foliage and stuff. And apparently the outer husk, the outer fruit of a mango or a cashew has this, like, this stuff, and it literally, like, eats your skin up, blisters your skin, and it can kick off this, like, sap. Sap. This dyshydrotic eczema, which I suffer from, so I absolutely know. Yes, if your hands are, like, totally messed up with some poison ivy and you have eczema, might as well just cut your hands off. This is terrible. But yeah, I think just putting two and two together based on what I could find in that, like, very short period of research, I do think that's what it was. It was either that marking nut or more than likely cashews. And somehow she touched that stuff and got this terrible reaction. And if you don't have modern drugs to take care of that, it just keeps going. Like, it'll start to heal up, and then it's like, no. And so her hands were probably blistered all the time.
Well, and because if your hands, I only know this from, I got a bad case of some poison ivy in the webbing of my fingers while I was on my archaeology dig in Connecticut. And at one point, I had my hand all wrapped up. I couldn't do certain movements. One thing you have to do is you have to sift dirt. I couldn't because I had stuff right here. And at one point I was calling my doctor to get steroids because it's getting really bad. And one of the blisters was pulsing and changing colors. Like, it was alive. And another girlfriend in our group, she was the TA. She got it really bad too and needed IV drugs. And luckily, a friend of mine, my doctor wouldn't give me steroids over the phone because I was in another state. My friend's doctor would give her steroids over the phone in another state. So she got meds for me. And thank God I took them, because if the blister bursts, that has the yucky stuff in it. So you can just keep spreading all over yourself. It was so bad I used to have to come home from the field and I would put my hands, one thing that we bring with us is it's stuff called Technu, and it's like a wash that if you think you get poison ivy or something, you can wash real quick and it'll take that oily shit.
That oily.
So I would come home, I would make a tub, a basin of cold water, ice, and load it up with Technu, and I would just lay my hands in it. It was awful. It was awful.
Yeah. Yes. Awful. So yeah, again, like, we all probably have had some brushes with poison ivy, so you recognize what that's like, or somebody that has. My husband's I'm super allergic to it, obviously, but my husband had it as a kid where, like, he had to get the IV because his eyes swelled shut. So
when I was a kid, I climbed a tree and was being like, you play like little witch doctor, like let's grind up plants, and you don't know what you're doing. I climbed up in a tree and was like, let's take these leaves and rub them all over my body. It was poison ivy. I was like 7, all over my body, into my throat.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it was.
So,
Thank
so
God I
yeah,
don't
but
have
I
to
mean,
do it.
but that's the thing. Like, today at least, even though as horrible as that is, we have topicals, we have actual prescription meds, we have steroids. These are all the things. I mean, this is where you have to go generally if you're truly that like allergic to poison ivy, and that chemical. And most people are that allergic to poison ivy. Like I know there are people out there that are like never had a symptom. I've worked,
Mhm.
I've rubbed it all over my body and don't have a problem, but most
Yeah, that's
people
what I was
are.
testing.
Yeah. It's interesting. The goats, they can eat it. It doesn't cause them any problems.
Yeah. Um, we are like so
Yeah, we're super over.
our time. I just want so even though like I do have a couple other things I could talk about, I just wanted to make sure that we before we go that we just look at this quilt real quick. That's kind of like the last quilt in there, just because I have real photos of it. And we can look at a couple things
Oh,
real
yes. I
quick.
love this quilt.
Yeah, up close. This is the New England Quilt Museum owns this quilt, and they recently had it's actually not that recent. It was like last year. I feel like we didn't look at it that long ago. Um, but obviously these photos are going to do just much better justice to anything they would be having online. Um, so this quilt is album quilt 1850 New England cottons applique. Techniques include embroidery, stuffed work, inlaid applique, and ink work. It's 103. It's 103.5 by 87 inches, and it is just
Yeah, this quilt
absolutely
is
breathtaking.
so unique, I think.
Mhm.
Um, those circle things. I mean, this could have been like your standard grid, with the regular old but they did this. And I'm just like, whoever you are, brilliant quilt maker. I love it. It's so
Yeah,
fantastic.
if you guys want to, look at this and other stuff, if you go back into our past videos, it's part of the video exhibit called Showing Off. And we look at this. I do just have real quick, just a couple of up close, like look at the execution.
Yes, I remember we just oohed and awed over the little house. It's not really
Marianne
such a
is
little
what
house.
cord these ringlets here, like around. This is applique.
Yeah, it's applique. Ordinarily I would say it would be bias, like bias cut pieces, but I've also seen many old quilts where they didn't want to waste fabric with the bias. So they somehow managed to get straight of grain. So I don't know. I couldn't say without looking like up close and detailed, but generally it would be like a very thin bias, like a bias binding kind of deal.
Yeah, and then we have a reel and a short where we talk about this particular piece because
I
I was
forgot
like,
about that.
I literally said like he's marching through saying, "Pardon me, do you have any gray poupon?" And then we were talking about how there's writing in here. I don't know what it says. I didn't look when I take photos. I don't I don't look that close. Oh my God, look at that. He's even got facial hair.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of got like some strong eyebrows. He's got, yeah. And the horse's mane.
Yeah, he almost looks like he's
Mm.
wearing fake lashes. Um, Yep,
It
here's
does look like a snake.
yeah. Here's a fabulous border. I believe these berries are stuffed. We got this green here is stuffed work. I know I have a picture of stuffed work. Right? Nope, that wasn't it. But this is a bird on the corner. Thought I had a picture of some stuffed work. Maybe it's this one.
Oh yeah, weren't
Yes.
those grapes stuffed?
Here's a
Oh,
stuffed
that is too.
rose. Look at this butterfly. Ugh.
Yeah.
They just
This is a pretty stunning quilt.
Yeah, they just did really amazing things with this quilt. Look at this like hummingbird. Such a fantastic plot. And a great quilt to end on. Yep.
Yes. I had a couple more things in here, but maybe we can quickly knock them out next week at the very beginning. There's a couple of like
just write
touching and tender passages. Yeah, I will.
Because it is part of what stinks sometimes when one, chapters are really long, and two, when they're really long with really good stuff. They're not putting a lot of fluff in here at all.
No, I go back to the fact that, like, again, summarizing information that, I mean, I've literally read whole books that took an entire book to get to the point that, he and Mary Elizabeth Johnson have summarized.
Yeah. So for anyone that came in late, for next week, for the 28th, we're doing the chapters, A Tranquil Nation is ripped apart through the Grand Epoch, and that's pages 103 to 181.
I will get started reading tomorrow because
yes,
that's more pages than usual.
Yes, it's roughly 47. I'm sorry, it's just the way that they did the chapters. And because we discussed them, you don't have to read everything with a fine-tooth comb. But anyhow, please come see us on Saturday for Stitch and Glitch. It's always a good time. Maybe we'll watch the Bernadette Banner thing on Saturday.
Oh yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, because she's interesting and yeah.
And we'll have the time while we're doing stuff. I might have to prep some stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, have a great week. Hopefully nobody's getting the rain that we are.
Yeah. I'm gonna get better than smoke.
That's true. All right, guys. We'll see you soon.
Good night.